Well, I asked, where's the beef? Let's call this for what this is. Oh my God! They are so hopelessly woke. How dare you? That is the intellectual capital of the left today. Give me a break. You are now watching the Daily Roundup.
Oh, hey, good day, good afternoon, everybody, depending on what part of the country that you're in. It's still morning here, but you're watching the Daily Roundup. It's normally hosted by my friend David Menzies, but I'm your guest host today, Sheila Gunn Reid, and I'm here today with my co-pilot, Tamara Ugolini. Tamara, how's it going?
Good. Yeah. Happy to be back here the next day after our Manic Monday yesterday with you, Sheila. So I'm excited to get into some of these fun topics, which coincidentally I'm wearing the shirt for. So this is part of what's the campaign that we have? There's Free the Beef, I think it is.
Yes, it's freethebeef.ca, where we fight back against the unscientific war on farmers and the war on meat, which is a war on your mind and your ability to think your way out of the catastrophe the Davos elites want to do to you. So I love that shirt. I'm a beef evangelist. Everybody knows that. So we should tell everybody what we're doing, and then we'll get into the news of the day, because there's a ton of stuff. And the protest of Jordan Peterson that everybody says was going to happen just fell flat on its face because, well, I'll get into it, but it worked out exactly how I thought it would. Anyway, this is the Rebel News Daily Roundup. It's where we talk about the news of the day, completely unscripted, which is, I think, sometimes the best way to deal with some of these things. Because some of the stuff we talk about, it's so deeply unserious. It's not even, like you shouldn't treat it as any more important than it is. But we are streaming on YouTube and Rumble, Odyssey, Twitter, and Getter. I got them all. But if you want to support the work that we do completely willingly, you can do that on Rumble and Odyssey. Those are two free speech platforms that don't really care about your politics. I don't really care about their politics. And I love that arrangement because it allows you to send us something called a Rumble rant. That's their paid chat, or Odyssey, it's called their hyper chat. And that's a great way for you to support us through the goodness of your heart, because you're cheering for your favorite independent news company that won't take a dime from Justin Trudeau. And it gives you a chance to get involved in the show also. So you can have your say, send a Rumble rant or an Odyssey hyper chat, and we'll do our best to read it at the end of the show. And Fraser McBurney, if you're watching, we will get to your chat. We know we missed it yesterday. It came in late, but we'll do our best to get to it at the end of the day. So, and we appreciate it. We appreciate all your support, Fraser, over the years, always on the live stream. So don't take it as a personal slight. We knew it came in after we hung up the phones, so we'll get to it today. All that being said, let's get into this Jordan Peterson event, because it was completely contrived by the mainstream media. So Jordan Peterson's going to be, well, he was, but if we dial back the clock a little bit, he's supposed to be speaking in Ottawa. I know he's so controversial, talking about personal responsibility and personal development and eating right and, bringing order out of chaos. Oh, so controversial that men and women are not identical creatures, that we do have a tendency towards liking certain things and being better at other things than the other person. Like, it's completely normal stuff that the left thinks is controversial. So he's going to be speaking at the arena where the Ottawa Senators play. In Ottawa. And so here come the activists. But from the very beginning, I thought, well, maybe there's like 5 activists that keep getting quoted in these mainstream media articles to create a controversy that really doesn't exist. Because as I was reading through all these articles about how he's hateful and how he shouldn't be allowed to speak because some of the things he says don't comport with the NHL's diversity guidelines, I was like, I just don't think normal people feel this way. I think if you are the kind of person who could sell out an NHL arena to like people to hear you talk, like to listen to an intellectual and author talk, I just don't think there are that many other people on the other side who want him censored. And as it turns out, we were right. Maybe let's go to the vid, and then I will Yeah, it was the Ottawa Coalition. Guess who those people are? Same old busybodies, by the way, who are like, oh no, honking, it's going to kill us. So let's go to the video from Lincoln, and then I'll shut up so Tamara can talk, because I realize I'm talking too much.
No one's forcing anyone to buy a ticket to this event.
No.
If you don't like what he stands for, if you don't like what he says, why don't you just move on and go to some other event? Why is there this, I guess, ambition for cancel culture today?
It's hard to say. They don't have any arguments to rebut. So they do ad hominem attacks. They call names. They protest. When you people interview the protesters, they don't even know why they're there.
You've noticed that,
yeah, they don't even know why they're there. They don't rebut Dr. Peterson on his arguments because he's speaking the truth. Yeah. I mean, and it's fact-based. So all they have is names and immature protesting and trying to create a ruckus that is unjustifiable.
Yeah, I love that even people in attendee there could see and have seen previously the reports where, you tried to get feedback or insight from anyone left-leaning in their protests, and they come at you with squeaky dog toys or little bullhorns to try to detract from the fact that they cannot attest to or elaborate on or face questioning on the things that they're standing for. And so, yeah, this National Post article that came out about the Peterson event just shows that in the public square, people are interested, ready, and willing to purchase tickets for his event to hear and see him speak. And the people who are facilitating this notion of, cancel culture, for lack of a better word, weren't even wound up enough to show up to protest anything. The mainstream media kept saying that there was going to be protests and they wanted the event canceled, and how dare Jordan Peterson share his unacceptable thoughts. And meanwhile, the event proceeded as normal without any interruption.
I've got so many opinions about this because, first of all, they say there were 30 community-minded organizations who were just thought we can't allow this outrage to occur in our city. Not a single one of them could put in the effort to show up. If you, which leads me to believe that they are completely insincere about this stuff. Like, look at this. He sold out an NHL arena, or at least,
a good portion.
A portion of it. But if you thought, like if I thought Hamas or something like that were marching in downtown Fort Saskatchewan, you bet your ass I would show up, right? Like if you think that this is a danger, this person makes your community less safe, they couldn't even put the effort in to show up. Excuse me, because it wasn't really, they are completely insincere about this. The most effort they put in to protesting Jordan Peterson was talking poorly about him to the media when they called looking for comment from people whom they knew would talk poorly about Jordan Peterson. Look at this. Like it, and it gets even worse because I saw today, like a Liberal MP from Canada. She was like, we must speak out against this. Like he's there causing hate and division. I'm like, your boss wore blackface like so many times you lost count. I'm sorry. I'm not taking advice from you people about what amounts to hateful. By the way, she didn't show up to protest. And she sure as heck didn't go inside the building and actually listen to what Jordan Peterson had to say. They want you censored in advance for things they dream in their minds you might say, but they never listen to you. And we get a lot of that here at Rebel News. We get people saying, what? I heard what people were saying about you, but then I went to see what you were actually saying during the convoy, and what people were saying and what you were saying were completely different. Yeah, I think this is it. Yeah, this girl.
Oh yeah,
Jordan Peterson is
misogynistic
rhetoric in my riding tonight. It was so bad that she couldn't even show up to have her voice known. Again, if you represent a riding and you think there's like something akin to a neo-Nazi wife beater holding a talk, you might want to show up if you can sincerely believe that, but you don't. So the most effort she put in was sending a tweet. Good job, lady.
From the safety of behind her screen. And the thing about freedom of speech and freedom of expression, which is the pillar that Peterson stands on and for, and that's the whole basis of all of his other thoughts, which apparently, according to the left, thoughts equal harm and crime and violence. Somehow, I don't know the mental gymnastics needed to reach that conclusion exactly, but I'm a huge proponent of free speech, obviously, and freedom of expression. And I think that if you bring your thoughts and your speech into the public square, and you have thoughts and speech that are not agreeable, then people are going to widely denounce you. And that's the beauty of free speech, is that they also have the freedom to denounce your thoughts and object them and bring their arguments forward and have that rigorous debate. And then it's through those discussions and that debate that the public in the public square and the public arena of thoughts decides what is truth and just and appropriate. And it's just going to show that the more that people like Peterson speak out and denounce all of this radical ideology infiltrating all of our institutions and levels of government, that the public is agreeable and in agreement with him, not these far left radical ideas that if you challenge them, you're supposed to be some sort of racist, misogynist who's inciting violence.
Yeah, it's weird. And it tips the hand of the people on the other side that they actually aren't confident in their ideas because they know that their ideas cannot stand up to scrutiny and debate. So instead of debate you, they want to shut you up. For example, if someone wants to talk to me about the benefits of meat, bring the noise. I'll talk about it all day long. If someone on the left, like climate alarmists, want to talk to me about how CO2 is bad for the environment, again, let's rumble. Let's talk all day long. I've got lots to say to rebut and debunk. But they don't want to have those conversations. They want you kicked off of YouTube. They want you censored on social media because they can't debate you. So why would they want other people to hear ideas that would refute their own? They'd rather just shut you up than win out in the free and liberal exchange of ideas.
And that's really dangerous, in my opinion, is creating and living in this bubbled echo chamber where you are never challenged, you never hear another point of view. I mean, how bland and boring would our world be if we just had certain thoughts allowed in the public square, in the arena of ideas? That is why it is so important to uphold that freedom. And even if you don't agree with what people say or think or feel, you have the opportunity to publicly and widely denounce them and bring your views and opinions forward. And then you literally let the public decide. And so as we can see from this mostly sold out space, that the public is deciding. And the fact that there was no protesters present to be heard from, I think that it's pretty clear that Peterson is right on the target and to the left, obviously over target.
Well, it's funny because Jordan Peterson says you got to put the work in, right? Like before you change the world, clean your own bedroom. And hopefully these activists were at home cleaning their bedrooms because they are not willing to put in the effort to change the world, to stop dangerous Jordan Peterson. One thing that's not on the list, but I want to get to it because it's on the topic of free speech. I don't know if you saw this NDP MP. She's bringing forward a motion. It's the critic for ethics, Matthew Green. Sorry, I said she because this feels like something a whiny woman would do, or a far left man. I mean, they're
you don't want to assume his gender.
Although they're indistinguishable emotionally and psychologically at this point. On Tuesday, the NDP critic for ethics, Matthew Green from Hamilton. Oh, Hamilton, save yourselves.
Of course.
Called on the members of parliament from all parties to condemn right-wing Fox News personality, the most watched cable news show on the planet, by the way, Tucker Carlson's on-air call for the United States Armed Forces to liberate Canada. This is my favorite. That kind of language is exactly what led to the failed violent, the only violence I think was committed against the January 6th mob. Insurrection in Washington, said Green. Tucker's brand of hate isn't welcome in Canada, and elected officials, regardless of their political party, have an obligation to call on that. I'm sorry, once again, the same way I won't take lessons from about racism and what amounts to hate from the people of the Blackface Party, I'm definitely not going to take it from the people whose leader celebrated a Cuban dictator, a racist Cuban dictator, and, said that, Cuba is a far better place under communism than it ever was prior. They're disgusting hospitals where if you go there, you just die. And so I'm just, where people in Cuba tie together garbage and float across shark-infested waters just to try to get to freedom in Florida. So I'm not taking advice from that party about what constitutes democracy. And, again, we talked about this yesterday. It was a thought experiment. If you can't do this stupid thought experiment, then just don't do the stupid thought experiment, but don't get in the public and start admitting that I don't want to do the thought experiment about why we aren't concerned about what's happening in Canada while we're dumping money into the Ukraine. Like if you don't want to do the thought experiment, just shut up. But you just, by wanting to censor Tucker Carlson, you're admitting that, yeah, maybe we should probably be concerned about Canada, and calling on all parties to denounce a commentator in the United States for giving his political opinion is exactly what Tucker Carlson is talking about, by the way. That's what he's talking about, is that this kind of stuff would end up in the parliament. That's crazy. This is what he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. To be able to even formulate an entire written page worth of a press release around, some casual jokes that Carlson made. Are there no better things to spend your time and energy on as a member of parliament in wake of what is happening in our Canadian political socio-economical landscape? It's astounding to me that one would even waste time on formulating an entire page related to that when there are way more pressing issues actually being faced by everyday Canadians than what a US political commentator said on air.
Yeah, like they want to denounce him in the parliament for hurting the collective feelings of Canadians. Like, it's just so deeply embarrassing, and the NDP is not a serious party. But neither are the Liberals, and they're running the show.
Yesterday, we're like, save Canada. Yes, help. Please send help.
Yeah.
And the NDPs are like, we must denounce this radical commentator, ban him from our air.
The whole point of what Tucker Carlson was saying was, like, things are really bad in Canada with regard to free speech and the treatment of political dissidents. And they're like, you know what we should do? Denounce the free speech of that political dissident in the United States. Like, it's like, do you hear yourselves, you lunatics? Probably not. That's why they're NDPers. Let's hit this last video. I think this one is from Pierre Poilievre in Question Period. And they're talking about these McKinsey contracts. And I think McKinsey just got a contract for 80 years, like 80 years to, I don't know. That's the problem.
We don't even know.
Nobody really knows. And these big consulting firms are acting as government ministries, but the government is doing a sneaky little thing here. They're saying this activity that's normally done by government bureaucrats, and don't get me wrong, I don't want the size of the bureaucracy to grow. I just want the bureaucrats that we have to work effectively and maybe go into the office once in a while. But what the government is doing is they're saying, okay, all this work that's normally done within government, we're going to stick it in these contracting firms. They're going to do it. And what that does is it blocks people like me and Tamara from filing for access to information to know about the work product and communications and who they're talking to, because we can't access private companies' communication. So it's a neat little thing they're doing to block transparency and I think align the pockets of their friends. So let's go to this Pierre Poilievre clip here. He's hammering Trudeau on this issue.
Well, they finally got him to admit that Canadians are suffering, and it's after 8 years of this prime minister. After 8 years of this prime minister, we have 40-year highs in inflation. We have 32% increase in crime. We have the TTC transit system in downtown Toronto overtaken by crime. We have more people eating at food banks and living at homeless shelters after 8 years of this prime minister. But not everybody's doing badly. His friends at McKinsey are rolling in cash. First, they said it was 50 million. Now the government says it's over 100 million. We want to know the real number. Will the Prime Minister finally answer the question? How much did he give McKinsey?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Speaker, everyone in this House, from conversations with constituents, with conversations with people right across the country, know well that Canadians are facing tough times. What the difference is between the Conservative leader and myself is, instead of proposing real solutions, instead of telling Canadians how they're going to help them and invest them, the Conservative leader stands up, crosses his arms, throws up his hands and says, everything is broken. Well, that's not what Canadians are living through, Mr. Speaker. Canadians stick up for each other. We're there for each other. We support each other through the tough times. That's exactly what we've been doing through this pandemic, through these past years. That's what we will continue to do, no matter how much.
Oh my gosh. I'm surprised he didn't start off by "let me be clear" while he disregards the entire question and obviously skirts it completely.
Yeah. The question was about McKinsey, not how friendly we are with each other. And by the way, he's the most divisive prime minister we've ever had, pitting people against each other, ostracizing some people, calling other people names just because they disagree with him on this one thing. There's a lot of, by the way, a lot of liberals who were in that convoy who were like, that was my breaking point. When I was a vaccine skeptic, or not even a vaccine skeptic, they were saying, but when I was like, I like vaccines, but I don't think anybody should be forced to take them. And they sort of went along with the convoy. All of a sudden, the guy that they voted for is calling them names. He's the most divisive prime minister ever. So for him to stand up and use his desire for unity to deflect away from a question about accountability, about how much money you're wasting on these outside contracting firms, that's like next level Trudeau.
Yeah, I mean, he literally used COVID-19 vaccines as a campaign wedge between Canadians and fueled hatred and divide. And clearly, on one of the first stops of his 2021 campaign trail in the fall, said, you know, do we tolerate these people? I will not sit on a plane or a train beside an unvaccinated person and let them put my children at risk. I mean, like pretty much verbatim is what he said while speaking at a rally. And then wonders why he needs this entourage of security detail now everywhere he goes, because Canadians have seen through his rhetoric and his poor policy that has obviously harmed Canada, especially over the last 3 years. But as Poilievre points out, you know, we've had 8 years now of this reign of Trudeau. And many people say, you know, the second wave is always worse than the first. And that was a COVID related saying, but now it goes to the Trudeau wave as well. I am so nervous to see what an additional number of years will do to this country if something doesn't happen in terms of an election or a snap election or a resignation or otherwise. This prime minister is out of control, really. And there's a Blacklock's article that was just posted today, and I'm working on a write-up about it, which I hope to have out by later this afternoon. But there's not just McKinsey Consulting. That's one of the largest private sector consultancy firms. But there are all of these shadowy contractual consultancy policy firms that are being paid to the tune of billions of dollars from Canadian taxpayers with very little transparency to show for what they've been hired to do and how much was paid to them, and whether or not what they've conducted and the work that they have done has been effective. If they've done anything. Yeah, here it is. If we just scroll down a little bit, it's about these shadowy, costly shadow governments. So the consultancy firms, I don't have it pulled up myself, but it was to the tune of, I think I can look it up, in billions anyway, have been paid to these various firms over the years. And they were, McKinsey especially, and Alexa has done really great reporting on that and even filed access to information requests, which we know, we don't get them back because they are immune to them, showing just how instrumental McKinsey was specifically in terms of advising the government on COVID policy over the last 2 years. And if you look into McKinsey, you can see that they're deeply ingrained in the public health sphere with the WHO, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I mean, all of these oligarchs are very closely intertwined. So absolutely, it's a fair question and needs to be scrutinized. And it is being investigated by the House of Commons Committee on Operations and Estimates. How much is going to these companies? What are they advising on? And are the results even worth it?
But as you're talking, I just remembered that this is exactly why Alberta needs the Sovereignty Act, because we need protection from Ottawa on this nonsense. And that brings me to our next story before we hit our ad break. So the Alberta government is already pushing back on carbon taxes. They're also pushing back on the gun grab and saying, we're just not doing it. Sorry, we're just not. They're pushing back on the fertilizer targets. They're like, no, sorry. I don't know. You want to do that in Ontario? Fine and dandy, but we're not doing that here. We've paused our provincial portion of the gas tax. And right now, one of the most atrocious things this country has ever done, euthanizing our vulnerable and calling it compassion. I remember another society did that in the recent history of the world. And we look back at it with horror. And yet now we're doing it and we're saying, no, they're choosing it while we push them off the cliff like the lemmings, just giving them a shove like Disney did to all those lemmings. So Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, she's pushing back against federal implementation of the new MAID legislation. That's medical assistance in dying. It's state-run healthcare euthanizing our sick and our vulnerable, especially for those whose underlying condition is mental illness. So thanks to public pressure, and I think a lot of our Rebel News viewers had a lot to do with that, the federal government has paused, but they're not shelving it. They've just sort of paused while they re-examine and continue to hear from stakeholders groups, which is like Dr. Kevorkian. They've paused it. It was supposed to move ahead in March, where they were saying that right now in Canada, it started off, you had to be like end stage terminally ill. So they estimated at the beginning of MAID that it would hasten your death by about 2 weeks. And people like me were like, nah, I don't like where this is going to go. It's on the surface, it sounds like a good idea for people who want to alleviate suffering, but so does palliative care. And that's where I was like, you know what? We need to expand palliative care for end of life and not hasten end of life, because this only goes one direction. And then it went to people who have a terminal illness, but their death is not foreseeable. So you could have just be diagnosed with ALS today. And you're like, okay, I'll book my death tomorrow. Good. Or lung cancer or breast cancer. And they're just like, you don't know when they're going to die, but it is a terminal illness. And they're saying, okay, well, I'm just going to get out right now. And then it moved to people with chronic illness or people who are dissatisfied with the level of care that they're getting. Well, this is Canada. Everybody's dissatisfied with the level of care that they're getting because the government rations your health care. So they don't allow competition. So those people were being allowed to die. And it was like people who were bulimic, people who had diabetes, people who experienced chronic homelessness, or people who were dissatisfied with getting a home care worker for their chronic illness, people who were dissatisfied with the level of care. That lady in the Simons video that sort of cracked this wide open, she actually didn't want to die, even though the ladies wear retailer Simon said, oh, look, let's celebrate her end of life choices. It's beautiful. But her friends came out and said, actually, she didn't want to die. She just couldn't get treatment. So this is the choice she made. And now they've expanded it to mental illness. And this really worries me, particularly for our vets who experience acute PTSD episodes that come and go really fast. And they already can't get care through Veterans Affairs. And if you're chronically ill with Veterans Affairs, they're like, why don't you just drop dead and do us all a favor? They're telling them that anyways. Now, if they don't have a chronic physical illness, they can access medical assistance in dying with a mental illness. And now the government has paused that, but they're studying it and they're going to bring it back. Like, this is where they're going. But Alberta says, no matter what the feds want, we are not doing that around these parts. And we're going to continue to give people the care and make our healthcare system better through innovation so that people can get the help that they need. So this stuff here is why we need the Sovereignty Act, to protect ourselves and our vulnerable people from the evils of the federal government and their grotesque progressive policies.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there too, Sheila, when you highlight the fact that this is no longer just for people who are suffering their final days of illness and are in, great agonizing pain situations. This is now for people who are suffering the fallout of Justin Trudeau's policies through homelessness and poverty. And while those firms like McKinsey are running to the bank with their billions of dollars of our taxpayer money, we have an entire segment of our population who is increasing in their financial disparity under the Justin Trudeau Liberals. Like, there's not even a light at the end of this tunnel here. And Alberta is looking more and more prosperous as Danielle Smith continues to ruffle Ottawa's feathers.
Yeah, we do this on another front too. And I equate these two things directly to the same issue. Evil and indulgence cloaked as compassion, and protecting government bureaucrats from actually having to do their jobs and help the people they're paid to help. And what I mean is that I see medical assistance in dying as like the sister problem to harm reduction for drug addicts. They call it harm reduction, but all it is a slow suicide by keeping people in their addiction, managing their addiction, instead of helping them achieve their human potential of being clean. Because behind every addict is a family, is children that are dealing with the fallout of an addict. And they tell families of addicts, don't enable them, let them hit rock bottom and then pick them up when they're ready to get clean. But addicts will never get to that point because the government is saying, here's a clean needle, here's some drugs, because we want you to do it our way, because that's the safest way. The safest way is to be clean. And so Alberta is moving from the NDP policy of harm reduction, which puts these, they call them safe injection sites, I call them shooting galleries, in low-income neighborhoods, which just destroys the neighborhood even worse, away from that and putting that money into drug treatment, because you want people to get healthy and better. And like the people who are considering MAID, we want you to have all the help that you need to live your life to its fullest, to the end of its natural life, of your natural life. And the progressives, they just, it comes down to not valuing human life. They see it as dollars and they pat themselves on the back saying, oh, look how kind we are to the drug addict. In between time, kids never get their parents back.
Yeah, I'm all about taking the money from lining the pockets of big pharma and putting it into real, tangible mental health supports, right? Because those drugs are coming from somewhere, and who's getting paid when we just hand them out willy-nilly for free and enable rather than actually heal and hinder, and facilitate reintegrating into society as an actual functioning person, rather than just this shell of a person maybe living in a tent city somewhere but getting free drugs and intermittent meals when you can crawl out of the filth for long enough to actually eat. So I think that we're way overdue for an ad break though.
Yes.
So let's hit a quick ad break and then we'll come back and talk more insane, radical, far left policy.
I am speaking to you at a moment of grave crisis. when violent and fanatical men are attempting to destroy the unity and the freedom of Canada.
But after weeks of dangerous and unlawful activities, after weeks of people being harassed in their neighborhoods and small businesses forced to close,
As democracy flourishes in Canada,
we don't always agree, and that's okay.
because individual liberty is cherished in Canada.
Our government will always defend freedom of expression and freedom of peaceful assembly.
It has now been demonstrated to us by a few misguided persons
After evidence of increased ideologically motivated violent extremism activity across the country,
just how fragile a democratic society can be.
it became clear that local and provincial authorities needed more tools to restore order and keep people safe.
These are matters of the utmost gravity, and I want to tell you what the government is doing to deal with them.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act.
The public's legitimate right to know why the government proclaimed an emergency and whether the actions it took were appropriate.
It is our view that there was no justification whatsoever to invoke the Emergencies Act.
It's so tough to watch. There's no reason for that. They were literally running the horses through the crowd.
The police came straight to me and he targeted me and he took his gun of tear gas and he actually shot me directly in my legs.
Was it worth invoking the Emergencies Act, ma'am, to trample on the rights and freedoms of Canadians?
Why do you think excessive honking means that the government should strip citizens away from their rights?
Our next and final witness is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Order à l'ordre.
That introduction with the Trudeaus contrasting, oh, it's so eerie and creepy. I said that yesterday too. And every time I watch it, it just doesn't get any less creepier.
Oh, it's so gross. And Kian chose the best, like creepy, ominous, sad movie music in the background. Like,
yes,
it's perfect. Kian's a true artist. And I think, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think we're pretty close to formalizing our first showing of that. So everybody stay tuned because we'll have some announcements to make very, very soon about Kian's latest movie, Trudeau on Trial. Okay, let's go into climate craziness. I kind of like how we're breaking up the show, like doing House of Commons news of the day, then climate crazies, then we have either like LGBTQ madness or America. So let's show this video. It's from our friend Cosmin Georgia from True North, who is, I think, one of the better investigative journalists in the country. I don't know how he's watching everything. He must have Google alerts set for everything. Anyways, on Monday, a French meteorologist on the channel TF1 lectured viewers to completely stop eating meat to save the environment. Let's see this.
30% de la pollution en France provient de notre alimentation due à la production, la transformation, les transports. Alors vous le savez, c'est important de manger saisonnier, c'est-à-dire de manger des fruits et légumes de saison, essayer de manger le moins transformé possible et peut-être retirer quelques jours, voire totalement, la consommation de viande si vous le souhaitez, évidemment. Tout de suite, le journal d'Anne-Claire Coudray. À tout à l'heure.
I love, for anyone... Yeah, go ahead, Sheila.
No. Go ahead.
Well, she says right in there, try to eat as little processed food as possible. But if you're not eating the meat, then you're going to be eating those like soy-based burgers and the bug burgers and all of these like pretty much very similar to dog food. Ingredients are found primarily in these soy-based meatless products. So if you want to eat less processed food, I say, I love meat. Eat the meat because it's what's going to keep you hearty and healthy This processed meat replacement junk is pretty much what they feed to animals, which is also not in their best interest either. So it's so funny the way that these virtue signalers will just counteract themselves in their own statements. And if you know how to look for it, you can see right through what they're trying to get at.
Yeah. Olivia, I'm going to put you on the spot because it just occurred to me because you know what, if I were not a journalist, I would be probably a meat-based personal trainer. I really would be. This is one of the things in my life that I'm most passionate about because it made the biggest change in my life. But W5 the other day, they did a story about how your avocado might be blood soaked. If you want to bring that up while I just sort of talk a little bit about what I saw right there. So this is the weather girl. Like this is the weather girl. What does she do? First of all, what are you doing talking about climate change? You can't tell me what the weather's going to be like on Friday with any sort of real accuracy. So please don't tell me how to eat. But like, first of all, getting rid of meat to save the environment. If you care about carbon emissions, and I don't, but if you do, then grazing cattle sequesters carbon, and large herds of animals beating up the soil and refertilizing the soil actually greens the environment. The herds of millions of bison and buffalo across the plains greened the plains because they break up the topsoil. They allow the seeds to go into the soil and germinate without cultivation. Their hooves do that. And they've done environmentalists who are on the like carbon is a bad thing side of the debate. I've done studies on this in Africa. They couldn't figure out why these places in Africa, despite the weather conditions and the weather conditions adjacent, they couldn't figure out why things were so green in certain areas. And it was like, that's where the gazelles go through. That's their path through. And it greened the environment. But this war on meat is really a war on your brain. And a war on your body, because you never actually stop eating meat. You just stop taking it into your body, because then all of a sudden your body has to cannibalize itself and all of its stores. So the meat you continue to eat is yourself to function. You start to sort of wither away. If you look at like long-term vegans, they've sort of withered away quite a bit. But your brain needs two things that are largely available. Well, B12 for sure. And DHA, it's available from algae. That's the only non-animal form. But I would prefer just to eat the fish than eat the algae than eating pond scum to get my DHA. Scientists have said that DHA is the consciousness chemical, and it is only available through animal sources except for eating pond scum. And they haven't quite figured out how it works, but if you're depleted in DHA, then your brain is not functioning properly. You can't make those thought connections in your head. It's like you have something on a shelf that you can't quite reach. That's what happens when your head is, when your brain is deficient in DHA. It depletes your cognitive abilities. Likewise with B12, kids who are deficient in B12, they've done studies in this in the developing world where they don't have access to meat. All it takes is 2 eggs a week to get those kids caught up to Western world kids, because they need animal sources of B12. And it's something that in kids, like people who work with refugees who are coming out of refugee camps because they don't have access to animal proteins. Their proteins are often like beans, legumes, chickpeas, because they're dry and they don't rot. And so you can sort of stack them up in sacks in a refugee camp. They're saying to those refugee workers, watch for these symptoms of kids who are coming through the system deficient in B12, because they're going to end up in school and people are going to think they have autism because B12 deficiency mimics autism in kids. And really, they probably just need some steak and some chicken and some eggs. And so when this crazy lady who should be telling me what the weather's going to be like in 18 hours is telling me to give up meat to save the environment, she's crazy. She's crazy. And she should just shut her pretty little face, because what she's saying is dangerous, but also unscientific. And do we have that clip?
Counteracting herself when she says don't eat processed food, but the replacement for meat is just processed food.
Yeah, it's like disgusting. And you buy hamburger and it's like, oh, hamburger, maybe water, maybe salt. Like that's everything that's in it. But usually it's just hamburger and water when it gets processed and comes to you. But you pick up like one of those like, I can't believe it's not meat burgers. And I'm like, no, I definitely can. When you pick it up, it's like reading the Bible. There's so many ingredients. It's like you flip it over and the ingredients are still going. And it's like chemicals and chemicals and chemicals and binders and fillers and things you shouldn't be eating. And these people are telling me that I shouldn't eat processed food. And by the way, the cattle are literally in the backyard. So that's the point I'm about to make here. So these people are telling us to give up meat, which is grown locally for the most part. People don't really ship meat all that far unless you're Canadians shipping pork to China because they can't meet their own nutritional needs there. But meat is usually a local thing. It's again why they give chickens in the developing world is because they can eat garbage and give you eggs and all of a sudden your kids are healthy. So meat is a local product. But sorry, hippies, your avocados that come on a refrigerated truck all the way from Mexico to Edmonton, that seems pretty carbon intensive to me, but it's also unethical. We can make the same argument we do for ethical oil that we already do for ethical oil, that we can for ethical food. And so your avocado might be soaked in the blood of the innocent, thanks to the cartels from Mexico. And this was on W5 the other day. And, you know, I do watch these things because I'm interested in nutrition. So let's play this.
Avocado farmers under attack.
This has made you a prime target.
Drug lords seizing control.
They're taking over.
W5 enters the danger zone.
Why did you agree to meet with me?
Exposing cartel killers.
Massacres and money.
In the green gold rush. An all-new W5 with Avery Haynes. Saturday at 7 on CTV.
So yeah, I don't know. Things can get a little hectic down at the 4-H meeting, but never quite cartel level violence. You know, like this is crazy. And these people are telling you to eat less meat. And it's like you're providing a good, stable income to your local family farm while making farmers suffer cartel violence in Mexico.
That's so interesting. I hadn't seen that clip. Thanks for bringing that to my attention, Sheila. We eat a decent amount of avocado around here.
So do I.
But love our local farmer. We have garnered many connections in the area, and although we don't farm directly like you do, it's so important to have that supply chain really minimized. And you know, when beef prices were skyrocketing in the supermarket, and our cost has gone up because naturally the cost to feed the animals have, as well as all the butchers and everything has skyrocketed under Justin Trudeau's inflation, the just inflation, as Polyev coins it. But minimizing, I think that supply chain length is so important moving forward, especially as, you know, this war on meat continues, is really showing your local farmer support, that you want them to continue bringing you the healthy, robust food outside of a chain or a grocery store conglomerate.
Yeah, people really need to ask themselves why the world's elites want you to eat less meat and get on the crickets, because they're not gonna. And I think it's because they do want you to be a mindless automaton without a fully functioning brain or a strong enough body to get out of this mess. I think they want like human robots. And I know I sound crazy. I realize I sound like Alex Jones right now, but you don't want a thoughtful populace, because smart, sharp populace is not a populace that you can control with your stupid, bad ideas. Bill Gates. Are you listening?
And remember to keep your critical thinking caps on, because the behavioral science agenda is going strong with those same elites. They will make you comply through nudges and compliance techniques, just pure propaganda. So it's important to keep your brain intact and your critical thinking skills. And that's my TED Talk for today. So I think we're running low on time.
I think we should skip ahead to this next one, though, because this is a perfect example of parking your critical thinking in the closet, closing the closet door, putting a padlock on it, and just leaving it there forever. This lady from MSNBC, apparently an MSNBC host, I don't know much about them unless they're going to talk about nutrition. She's received all of her COVID shots. Despite
so what's that, like 6 now?
All of your COVID shots means what? Like 1 a month? I don't know what that means anymore. She tells MSNBC viewers that she got a very serious case of myocarditis, but it's not from the vaccine. Let's watch this.
Of course. I know from my Twitter feed that many of you have wondered why I have been off the air for a little while. Well, I have been dealing with a little bit of a health scare. On December 20th, I began to feel chest pains, and they waxed and waned over a period of 10 days. I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, but as they continued to get worse, I started to think something was actually wrong. It was December 30th when I finally went to an urgent care and was told I had reflux. I didn't really buy it, but I was relieved it wasn't my heart. My body, though, was pretty certain not to believe the reflux. The next day, on December 30th, I woke up with severe pains both in my chest and in my left shoulder, and it was like a tightening in my chest. When I took deep breaths, that got worse when I was laying flat. I knew enough at that moment to understand that it could mean, could is the key word here, that I was having a heart attack, especially because it was happening in the left part of my shoulder. I want to remind you, I run 7 miles 3 to 4 times a week, or I did. I do yoga. I don't eat meat. I don't smoke. I drink occasionally.
She doesn't eat meat.
Not right now, though, because my doctor tells me I can't. Aside from probably not getting enough sleep and working too much, I'm a pretty healthy person. But on that day, I was anything but. My husband drove me to the emergency room, and from there, the nightmare that has been my January began. I was diagnosed with pericarditis, inflammation of the lining of my heart, brought on by a virus, a literal common cold. I also had fluid around my heart that had to be drained, or else it could hinder the beating of my heart. I was hospitalized for 4 nights and transferred from a local hospital to NYU Langone here in New York City. On January 4th, I was finally discharged after doctors drained the fluid around my heart, and I bounced out of the hospital. I couldn't get out of there fast enough with the hopes I was on the mend. But that was not the end. 3 days later, I was readmitted when I felt a flutter in my heart, like a butterfly. It was inside my chest. They determined I had developed myocarditis, inflammation of the actual heart now, the heart muscle. I remember being shepherded through the emergency room and wondering, is this it? It wasn't, thank God. Instead, I spent 5 more days in the hospital where they ran a battery of tests, adjusted my meds, and made sure nothing else was.
Yeah, so they had to adjust her meds. So now she's a lifelong pharma customer, and all because of that pesky common cold that we heard so often pre-2020 caused heart problems.
Yeah, and how much do you bet that she is going to continue to get the boosters?
Oh, poor thing. To her own demise, too. Like the people are so out of touch and unwilling to, as we mentioned right before we showed that clip, unwilling to think critically about what could really be at play here and connect the dots, because, I mean, there are trickles of instances of myocarditis post the thing that we cannot speak about on YouTube, that's well acknowledged by health authorities and data analysis. This is no secret anymore. It may have been. Oh, I'm losing my battery here. Sorry. It may have been a secret, a year ago when we were first spilling the beans here and alerting the public that there could be this risk to your organs and specifically your heart. But yeah, to her own demise, will continue along with the narrative, but also continue taking these meds now for the rest of her life, which feeds even more directly into the pockets of big pharma. Isn't that convenient for them?
Yeah, it's kind of sad, but to crawl inside the mind of these people, I guess they can't really admit that it is the thing that we all think it is, because then to acknowledge that themselves would mean they have to acknowledge culpability in pushing it on other people. And thus damaging other people in the same way they themselves are damaged. So just to not live with the guilt, they just won't admit anything to themselves and continue on in this sweet, sweet lie instead of the harsh reality of what has happened to them and what they have encouraged other people to do to themselves.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who flouts being healthy, not eating meat, so there I'm like a little bit of a yellow flag. But can no longer run or do the yoga, I mean, or drink the alcohol. Not that I would condone that anyway. But, you know, your whole life now has been flipped upside down and it is being spewed as though it's the result of a common cold when we have data and analysis and clear indications that there are unprecedented factors at play being pushed by the same organizations. Just the inability to draw the parallels is astounding, and also be gaslit, right? Like you are a victim of gaslighting at this point, and you are re-victimizing anyone who trusts you and who you're speaking to through this ridiculous notion that this was somehow caused by the common cold.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, could you imagine a doctor coming in and saying to you, you have myocarditis, but it's the cold. It's not the vaccine. And you're like, okay,
it's
perfect,
the cold
thank
that
goodness. We
have no idea when you had it. If some time ago you had a cold and now you have myocarditis. Sorry, we never heard about this before, but now it's a new thing.
Yeah. And she's like, whew, thank goodness it's not that other thing. Okay, let's get to these chats because I know you're running out of phone battery. And if I go over like any little bit, my day, my manic Monday has turned into a terrible Tuesday. So let's get to this. Fraser's chat from yesterday. Fraser McBurney, $5. These draconian laws come from the Prime Minister's office and Trudeau. The police are acting like brown shirts. I see nothing and I'm doing my duty. Can't wait until we rid our country from the Liberals. Thanks, Rebel. Okay, and I'm going to scroll all the way down. All righty. All right. So another one from Fraser McBurney. $5. A little known fact about Cuba in the 1940s and 50s. Cuba had the 8th highest standard of living in the world. Yes, that's true. I just wonder how low it has gotten now. Yeah. It's true. And Fidel Castro was a renowned homophobe, executed Black people, gay people. So it's weird that he is somebody celebrated by the NDP, but it's really not about the people, is it? It's about the pushing the ideology at all costs. I mean, when you talk to people from the far left and they say, well, you know, like, we really should centrally plan everything. And you're like, oh, but millions of people died in China when they did that. And millions of people died in the Soviet Union when they did that. They're like, oh, it's just sort of, to them, it's the cost of doing business or ruining your business, however that may be. AMT 60, $5. Sheila, what do you think about the first 15-minute city being done in Edmonton, Alberta? Well, you know what, you guys got to pay attention to rebelnews.com a little bit more, because before everybody now was talking about the 15-minute city thing, I reported on it first. I wrote the article on it about the 15-minute cities, and it's something that has been adopted in 2020 in Edmonton. But the thing is, you have to urban plan your city into these little ant farm neighborhoods before you lock people in them. So that's what they're doing. So right now it's been adopted as an urban planning strategy. And if you go on to 15minutecities.org, you'll see some crazy things like they're like, are 15-minute cities a feminist idea? You bet it is. And here's why, like just the dumbest stuff. But yeah, so in Edmonton, it's currently an urban planning strategy because you have to put everything people need in the neighborhood before you lock them in at like an open air prison, which is the next step. And then say, oh, we're doing this to, as they say, I think it's Cambridge, Oxford. I forget which UK city it was. Don't send me letters, but I don't know. I confused the two. I don't remember. I'm very sorry. I also confuse Kamloops and Kelowna all the time. Don't take it personally, Brits. But so they're doing it, they say, to relieve traffic snarls. That's why they say they're doing it. Oxford, thank you. They say they're doing it to relieve traffic snarls, but if you drill down on their reasons, it's also for climate change. So these are, you can't say climate lockdowns because you get an AP fact check, but it's in the list of reasons why they are adopting these policies, and likewise with Edmonton. So I hate them. And it is the war on the car, and because the car is freedom. The car is freedom. The car is like, you can get a junker for $1,000, or you can blow a bunch of money on an obscene car. And it doesn't matter because it's your money and you can drive it wherever the heck you can afford to drive it. And so people are coming and go. It's hard to lock people down in their little communities when they've got a car. So now we have to start the war on the car, right? Make a walkable city so that you never buy that car in the first place. So you can't get out of the city when you need to. I know, I sound like Alex Jones. I got to stop. I got to stop myself. Do you think the mayor there will get away with that? It's already happening. We're on our second mayor. From what I've heard, you need permission to leave the district. No. It's just an urban planning study. So when they build, am I frozen up? I don't know.
I
think I am.
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
I think. Oh, we have Sheila.
Do you have me back? No, you don't. Am I back?
There you are.
Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. I hope I don't have internet problems. I have like several interviews the rest of the day. But yeah, it's not mandatory yet. We're on our second mayor in Edmonton. I don't live in Edmonton, thank God, but second mayor doing this. And it's just an urban planning strategy right now. So if you build a new development, it's got to have all these services in there, because then they'll build a wall around it, the virtual wall eventually. That's what I think. That's how it's happening in other places. So you got to start somewhere. Aaron Burton, $32.10. Keep up the great work. You are all awesome. How is Kat doing? Will Nat and Misunderstood be back soon? I think we're putting the show on hiatus, and Kat is doing great. And I don't know how much about her. I think everybody knew that she was pregnant. So she's got a bouncing
her
baby
and
cat.
baby are doing well. If you follow her on social media, she'll post updates there, as she sees fit. I don't want to disclose any of her personal life or anything that she wants to keep private. I think there are a couple banked Misunderstoods, though, that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And then I think those will be the last of the episodes for the foreseeable future.
Yep. Mr. K. Crossman gives us $5. Did anyone ever find out what happened to the other guy who got trampled by the horses in Ottawa? We tried, we could not. We looked, Alexa did her very best, but we just couldn't find him. So that's it. I think we're all caught up. It's 12:03, which gives me time to change my shirt because I have to look a little bit nicer for my next interview because I'm filling in for Ezra. So I think that's it. Tamara, thank you so much for joining us today and helping me get through the show and try to keep everything on track. Thanks. Special thanks to Olivia behind the scenes, because I know we threw a few things at her that were not on the list of things. And Yankee, special thanks to you for rounding up the chats and rounding up some of those articles that I called for to help Olivia out. Thanks to everybody who pitched in and to all of our regular viewers. And I'm not sure who's here tomorrow. It could be me, could be anybody. You know what? I'm just
anyone's guess at this point.
I'm just going to assume it's me. Okay. I'll probably be back here tomorrow. And as David Menzies always says, stay sane.
For the first time since 2012, Canada does not rank among the top freest countries worldwide. During the pandemic, like other governments worldwide, governments in Canada restricted freedom of movement, expression, assembly, and other freedoms even more than they had in previous years, said Fred McMahon, resident fellow at the Fraser Institute and co-author of this year's Human Freedom Index. The index measures personal freedom, the rule of law, safety and security, identity and relationships, i.e. the freedom to choose your relationship partner, freedom of movement, speech, assembly, and religion, alongside economic freedom, the ability of individuals to make their own economic decisions. This year, Canada ranks as the 13th freest country in the world, based on 2020 data, the earliest available, compared to 6th in last year's ranking, based on 2019 data. While we take no position on the necessity of COVID policies, they unquestionably limited freedom worldwide. For the first time since